So I use the jacks right there, and then I got the jack stands underneath this right here. And right now I'm just dismantling, pulling the tie rods, and then pulling the CV axle out. I already got it out on this side. Oh, all used to, but I'm gonna break this down because nobody told me about the, what the sizes were and stuff. So this tie rod is an 18 millimeter. These strut rods, or whatever they are, these bolts, are a 21, and that's on both sides. So I had to get a socket to remove the axle nut, and these axle nuts are a 32 millimeter deep socket. To get the kingpin or the crown pin off of the axle nut, I just used this to get the thing off. I use these just to grab the pin, the cotter pin, and just like squish it and manipulate it. And I just slip this through the eyelet, and these are sort of a needle nose plier. And I'm using 2 jacks. I had to jack it up a little bit on each side, about 4 inches at a time on either side, and then I picked up this motorcycle jack to hold the transmission because it's got that wider stance, and this thing drops down to about 4 inches. And I pulled this clip right here for the clutch cable, and then a selector. I just had to undo this bracket. It's tucked back here, but yeah, I had to undo this bracket. It was a 13 millimeter bolt right there. Tranny fluid out of this thing. From what I understand, this is the only way to get it out is through the oil pan. And it is suggested that you change your filter when you do this, and I'm just bleeding it dry into this tea bottle that I had cleaned out, ready to go. I'm just putting a little bit of pressure right there and letting it drain into there. For pulling the CV axle out, all I did was I got this little eyelet deal that I use for my jack, but it has a flat end on it. And I just put it right here where this blue gasket is, right here, right in between there. And you just, you get it, work it in there, you work it back and forth, you grab it with your hand like that, work with it, it rotates in your hand. Make sure you drain your fluid. I pulled this driver's side CV joint out. I did it from the top. The passenger side, I did it from the underneath, but I had to borrow this. And so I came in like that, rotate it until the lip shows, and then pry it out that way. It pops right out. Probably needs like 6 pounds of pressure. And then I had these Powerade containers that I was going to catch the oil in. And since I didn't end up using them, cleaning them off, if you go underneath here to where the CV joint came out, you can put this in there like that, and it fits really well. And that'll help keep the dust out of there. Ta-da! And then it's got threads on the inside, so when you're ready to pull it out, grab those threads and yank that out. You'll have a clean inner transmission, which is important. Okay, so I got my transmission cooler lines that got to come off. What I'm doing is I'm taking a bottle of lubricant, just spray. You just spray it on there. Just like that. Let it soak in. These socket screwdrivers, they tend to fit just right under the hose clamps. So I'm going to put that on there. And then as it loosens, I'm going to work it back. Okay. And that makes everything easier to get to, and wipe my hose off that I just sprayed with lubricant, so I get a nice grip. And I'm trying to pull these off, and these cables are old, so I'm putting a lot of force on there. So I decided to go get a open face wrench that fits in there, and I'm just gonna work it off that way, and that should come off pretty easily. Okay, I got the hose off. Now my plan is to take this, and jam it in there and clamp the hose around it. So we try that right now. And it worked. So I have my cooler line exposed, and I have this screwdriver that I just clamped on there with that same hose clamp. And just tuck it right here so it's out of the way. But yeah. Now I can do the same thing with the second one. To get this one off, I doubled up 2 wrenches to fill in. It was a little harder to get off. Okay, I got this plate off. It's that one that goes right here. Oh, this empty space. These 2 bolts are 15 mil. And then these 2 bolts are 18 mil. Okay. I just removed the bolts from this bracket under here. It was 2 of these black bolts, and it was an 18 millimeter for these both. Sizing for these bolts is 15 millimeter for this one right here. Also the one underneath it. For that one in the back. $18 millimeter. Okay, right now I'm working on the starter. It's easier to undo this bolt right here holding, it's a 14 mil. And it's easier to do it while it's still mounted to the block. And so it's mounted right here. This is the super long one, and the super shallow one, or not, it's not super shallow, but the shorter one goes underneath it. And that hole up there, the silver one. And then these are both 15 millimeter. I've got this dust cover off over here. It goes right under here. It comes out when you take these 2 big bolts out. This big one and this small one. Well, this whole bracket right here. I'm going to crack this one, and it is an 18 millimeter head. Okay, I was hooked up the thing to the plate. I got these bolts out. What I had to do was just put my breaker bar in there and hold it, and then pin it up against this, the bottom of the engine here, and then push on it as hard as I can. Try not to shear the head off of these bolts. But all right, this Torx bolt comes from a bracket that's holding the transmission to the engine. And it's all the way back. I wanted to get all these under bolts done first beforehand, but just above the CV joint, there's a bracket up there holding the engine to the transmission. All right, I'm removing a 18 millimeter bolt. You know, those are the heavy ones. When they're 18s, those are going to be some serious support. But when I pull on this right here on that bolt, you can see it moves the engine. So I'm going to put this bracket back right here and give myself some support while I'm pulling that off. I'm trying to get to this bolt here. That one right there, back there. And I got to remove this air filter assembly, and I'll be able to come into the top. All right, I got that bolt. I had to pull the air. I just had to loosen that hose clamp right there and pull the air off the carburetor intake, and then I was able to take this. It's an 18 millimeter. I was able to take my 24. I just put the eyelet over there, and then I got this up here. And I was able to put this on there, and well, anyways, yeah, you put it on there and then you ratchet it that way and it pops it loose. All right, I just removed the mount from under here. Be careful not to drop any sockets or anything down in here, because you will have to chase it down through the frame with a magnet if you have it on a stick. I dropped a socket down there, and luckily by the graces of higher powers, I got it back. Okay, this is starting to drop already. And so I think I'm gonna try to remove this bracket because I think that's holding it still. But yeah, this is where I'm at. You can definitely see it starting to separate a little bit. Pulling off the torque converter on this thing, I took a note from that movie, The Incredibles. The only thing strong enough to break itself is itself. So I just ran a tire rod through this right here and then pinned it up against its frame and used its weight against itself, and then you torque it right here, and it pulls on the engine when you do it, but it does break loose. And I'm spraying all these bolts with PB Blaster. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, the legendary dreaded rear main seal. Finally got it. Alright, so I got that seal in there. What I did is I took the old seal and I just placed it right over it and tapped it in real gently. Make sure the middle doesn't get folded over on you. That's how far in it sits, like that. Okay, I got the tranny back up in there. It was not easy. So you start here at this mount, this top mount, get that attached back on there and get that eyelet through there, and that'll kind of hang right there and give you a guide to go left, stage left. And then there's some clips and a bracket that I still need to get back there, but I'm not in the mood right now. So what I had to do is I got this bracket on first, and then after you do that, you just get it like, well, when you're raising it up, there is a flange back behind where the CV axle is and the engine. It's like a little dust cover, a thin sheet of metal. You have to make sure that clears it. So it kind of, it's like this, but it'll kind of go like that and then come up and then angle. Okay, so once you get it up here, you have to remember when you're manipulating these engines to get the bolts to move, the engine moves too. So you have to like work with both sides. And then when I had it all good and close, I came over here and I just put my foot up against right here and held on to the thing so you know you don't knock your car off its deal. But I had to kick it like that, just straight push that shit on there. And then I let a couple of screws through, but you have to remember this aluminum is softer than these steel bolts. Okay, I'm installing the flywheel to the clutch plate or whatever it is, and I totally didn't mark it, so I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm probably gonna be in trouble, but I got this lined up and threading these bolts in. And what I'm doing is I'll put a bolt in here, like that, and then you turn it with your open-faced 18mm wrench. Let's hand tighten that in there. And then you just grab your wrench, and as you tighten it, it's going to rotate it and give you access to your next bolt. Like that. And then when you're ready, we're going to have to find a way so we can cinch them down. But this will make it go up into the case high enough to give you your next bolt right there. I'm installing the starter, and the longer bolt's going to be up on top, but you have to remember to put your bracket back in. That's going to hold your throttle body cables and stuff. It's just the bracket right there, those two little pins, and then this goes on there right here. I put that in there, and then I was like, wait a minute, why is that top bolt way longer than the bottom one? Or is it the other way around? But I knew that that bottom one couldn't be that long, and I certainly wouldn't want to run that into my tranny. Hopefully this thing works after I'm done with it. Huh. Anyways, longer bolt up on top, put this back before you do it, and then yeah. Another thing I was confused on, I got my starter in here, and I have this ground, this heavier gauge ground here, and I could not figure out where the hell it goes. And so it turns out it just mounts down here to this bottom bracket.